Hello, my name is Emily Beynon, and in today's video I'm sharing 10 must-have tools I keep on my music stand to make practicing more focused, more efficient, and yes, sometimes more fun. You'd be surprised how much more productive a practice session can be when you've got the right bits and bobs within arm's reach. But let's actually start with the music stand itself. I've got two that I use. There's this one for when I'm at home. It's super sturdy, and I've got a little wooden shelf underneath, so there's space for all my gadgets and knickknacks. And then there's a featherlight one that I take with me to rehearsals or concert venues that might not have a music stand available. And don't forget to put your name on it, just in case. Oh, and technically I do have a third one, this teeny tiny stand for my iPad. I haven't used it for performing yet, but it folds up smaller than the tiniest umbrella. It's the Mini-Put by Dolphinos, and it's seriously compact. By the way, quick note, none of the products I mention in this video today are sponsored. They're just tools that I personally use and love. So let's talk gadgets, starting with probably the most important, the metronome. I like to leave my phone outside my practice room, so I use this good old-fashioned Seiko model. It has a dial to set the speed, volume control, and two sound options. It's simple, distraction-free, and does the job. Now, I do understand the argument that using a metronome can hinder your internal pulse. The challenge usually isn't keeping in time with the metronome, it's maintaining that steady pulse after it's been turned off. But if you use it creatively, it's incredibly helpful. For example, I sometimes set it to click only on the second and fourth beats of a bar in 4/4 time, or perhaps in a faster tempo, just once per bar. When I need more advanced options, I turn to two metronome apps. The first is called the Odd Metronome. It lets you create custom beat patterns, super useful if you're practicing pieces that shift between different time signatures. For instance, if you're working through a section in 2/4, 5/8, 7/8 and then 3/4, you can program exactly that sequence and save it for next time. The second app is part of the tonal energy tuner. One feature I love is the ability to randomly silence a portion of the beats. You can choose how much gets silenced, say 30%, 50%, even 80%.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And it's a brilliant way to test your internal pulse. Plus, it's fun. Next up is my tuning machine. I've had this one, also by Seiko, for years. It's reliable and I've used it an awful lot. Here in the Netherlands, our standard pitch is A is 4/4-2. But if I've got concerts in the UK or the US, I'll switch it to 4/40 for a few weeks beforehand, just to adjust my ear. And the same goes for places where A 4/4-4 is the norm. I use the tuner most during long note exercises. In a way, you could say that I'm training my ears to what's the right pitch. It helps me spot the notes which tend to be a bit sharp or a bit flat. It's especially helpful when working on dynamic control, as I work on keeping the pitch stable during crescendos and diminuendos. Now, you might have heard the terms equal temperament and just tuning. In simple terms, equal temperament is how a piano is tuned, so all the intervals are mathematically even. But in band and orchestras, we use just tuning, adjusting the intervals slightly for a better sounding chord, like, for example, sharpening the fifths or flattening the major thirds. And knowing my tendencies in equal temperament helps me make those micro adjustments that I need in ensemble playing. It's probably a topic for another video, but that's how I use tuning machines to prepare. Now, if I'm traveling and don't want to carry everything, I use two tuning apps. One is Clear Tune, which is a straightforward digital version of the tuner I normally have on my stand. And the other one is called Tonal Energy Tuner. It's quite an extensive app. You can use it in all sorts of ways, like drones, and it's got visual indicators and even some harmonic overtones. And yes, I do get a thrill when I earn a green smiley face for holding a note in tune. Next up is probably the most traditional item on the list, a pencil. And I would encourage you to use a 2B pencil when writing in your music. It's soft enough not to scratch the page, and it's easy to rub out cleanly afterwards should you need to. Speaking of which, an eraser is a must. And I like the kind that you can pop on the end of your pencil so you don't lose it. Of course, a pencil sharpener is an essential piece of kit too, but from when I'm travelling, I always keep a spare pencil in my flute case just in case. The next thing that always lives on my music stand is the cleaning rod. Now, a simple wooden stick with a cotton handkerchief work perfectly well, but I love this Valentino flute swab, which absorbs a lot of moisture really quickly. And another tool I use is this flute flag, and the great thing about that is that you can wipe out your flute without taking it apart. So if I'm feeling a bit lazy and I'm going to put my flute on the flute stand between practice sessions, then that's the one I might go for. But whatever you use, just make sure that your flute is dry before you put it back in the case. It really helps protect your pads and prolong their life. Speaking of pads, if one of your keys fills with water, a quick fix is to use a cigarette paper. My favourite brand is Job, because they don't have any glue on them. But they can be a bit tricky to find. They're made in France, so if you're lucky enough to be there, that might be your best bet. But they are available online if you search for them and you don't mind buying several packets at the same time. Of course, using a cleaning rod with a cloth works just as well, maybe even better. But in the middle of a concert, I don't always have time for that, so these are a good, quick emergency solution. I think we're on number 6 now, and this one is optional, but I find it really helpful. Small, removable, sticky notes. You might remember from an earlier video where I talked about how to practice that I like to earmark the trickiest passages in a piece with these little coloured flags. I'll work on these passages intensively first before anything else, and once I start to feel more confident, I'll start removing the flags, sort of like ticking off a to-do list. Also in the optional but helpful category, 2 little notepads. One is a practice log where I jot down what I've practiced, how much time I spent, and any notes like metronome markings or how long I held a note. Sometimes it's really detailed and sometimes it's just the date and how long I spent, but it helps keep me accountable. The other notepad is more of a brain dump pad for all the thoughts that pop into my head mid-practice. Things like call so-and-so, pick up that parcel. Once I've written it down, it's out of my head and I can refocus on the music. Tool number 9 is a bit quirky, but I love it. A single die. Yes, like from a board game. I use it for tracking repetitions. For example, if I want to repeat a tricky bar 5 times perfectly, I move the die from 1 dot to 2, and from 2 to 3, and so on. That way I'm not distracted wondering, wait, was that the 3rd time or the 4th? You might remember from my last video on taking breaks that nano breaks are a great tool for effective practice. And I found that pausing just long enough to turn the die between repetitions is the perfect micro break to help my brain lock things in. Another invaluable tool I keep on my music stand, and yes, I actually have 2 of them, is a timer. I use them in all sorts of ways. To structure the practice sessions, to time long notes, or simply to help me stay focused for a set amount of time. One timer is usually set for the total length I want to practice and the other for shorter intervals, whether it's working on a tricky passage, repeating an exercise, or even for timing a little mini practice break. This kind of timed work, sometimes called the Pomodoro method, really helps me stay intentional about how I use my time. Especially if I only have 15 or 20 minutes to practice, it keeps me from drifting or overworking one section. It's such a small tool, but it makes a really big difference in how I structure my practice. Last but definitely not least, I always keep a pair of earplugs on my music stand. I have two types I rely on. The first is by Alpine. They're reusable, super comfortable, and they come in this little case that's easy to keep on my stand. The second is from Hears. They're a little more expensive, but I can really wear them for hours. Even if you're just practicing alone in a relatively small space at home, earplugs can really help protect your hearing and reduce fatigue. So, those are my 10 tools that live on my music stand. Did I miss anything? What do you keep on your stand? I love hearing your ideas, so let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.